When the Roman Empire fell, the West lost everything. Not the buildings. The books. In the centuries that followed, the great libraries of antiquity went dark. The works of Aristotle, Galen, Ptolemy, Euclid, vanished from European shelves. Some were burned by invaders. Some were buried in monasteries by monks who could no longer read them. Most were simply forgotten. By the year 800, a European monk could spend his entire life inside a scriptorium and never read a single page of Plato. He would not have known the name. The light, it seemed, had gone out. But 1,000 miles to the east, another light was rising. A new city, designed in perfect circles, built from nothing in just 4 years. A new empire, the Abbasids, Abhsids, stretching from the borders of China to the Atlantic. And a new caliph, Khalif, who would do something no ruler before him had dared. He would buy the past. And he would translate it into the future. This is the story of the House of Wisdom. And how Baghdad saved human civilization from being erased forever. His name was Al-Mamun, Al-Mamun. 7th Caliph of the Abbasid dynasty. Son of the legendary Harun al-Rashid. A scholar in his own right, fluent in argument, fascinated by Greek philosophy. And a man who, the chronicles tell us, dreamed. In one famous account, recorded by the 10th century bibliographer Ibn al-Nadim, Aristotle himself appeared to the caliph. The dream Aristotle was an old man, pale-skinned, seated on a bench. Al-Mamun asked him, "What is the good?" And the philosopher answered, "Whatever the intellect deems good." Whether the dream is history or legend, its meaning is the same. Al-Mamun believed that reason was a gift. And he believed the gift had no nationality, no religion, no border. Around the year 820, he formalized an institution his father had begun. The Arabs called it Bayt al-Hikmah, Bayt al-Hikmah. The House of Wisdom. It was, at first, a royal library, a collection of manuscripts inside the caliph's palace. But Al-Mamun had a stranger and more dangerous ambition. He wanted every book that had ever been written. He sent envoys to Constantinople, to India, to Persia, to the courts of distant kings. He paid translators in gold, by some accounts, the weight of the manuscript itself. When his armies defeated a Byzantine emperor in battle, his peace terms included not just land and tribute, but books. A clause in a treaty, written in blood, demanding philosophy. Into the House of Wisdom came Greek philosophy, Persian astronomy, Indian mathematics, Chinese papermaking, Hebrew medicine. For the first time in human history, one institution tried to gather all of it under a single roof. And then it began the slow, patient work of resurrection. Translation is not copying. Translation is resurrection. To carry a thought across 1,000 years and 1,000 miles, a translator must rebuild that thought from its bones. The grammar of one language will not fit the grammar of another. A word in Greek may have no equivalent in Arabic. So the translator must invent one, and in doing so, invent a new way of thinking. At the House of Wisdom, they did this in teams. A Syriac Christian named Hunayn ibn Ishaq, Hunayn ibn Ishq, led the most famous of them. He spoke Greek, Syriac, Arabic, and Persian. He would compare 3 or 4 copies of a single Greek text, hunting line by line for scribal errors. Then he would translate first into Syriac, then into Arabic, refining with each pass. He translated Galen, Hippocrates, Plato, Aristotle. By the end of his life, he had personally rendered more than 100 Greek medical works into Arabic. His son and his nephew worked beside him, a family business of translation that lasted 3 generations. His work was so precise that, centuries later, when European scholars wanted the cleanest version of a lost Greek original, they reverse translated from his Arabic. The original was gone. The Arabic shadow of it was truer than anything else they had. Think about what that means. A Greek philosopher, translated by a Syrian Christian, working for an Arab caliph, in a Persian-built city, and 1,000 years later, that strange chain is the only reason we still have the philosopher at all. But the House of Wisdom did more than preserve. It built. The mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Khwarizmi, worked these halls. His name, Latinized, gave us the word algorithm. His book gave us the word algebra. He took Indian numeral systems, Greek geometry, and Persian astronomical tables, and forged something new. A way of solving problems that did not yet have names. In the same century, astronomers commissioned by Al-Mamun set out across the desert to measure the circumference of the Earth. They drove stakes a known distance apart, took the sun's altitude at noon, and ran the calculation. They were off by less than 2%. Physicians like Al-Razi, Al-Rahc, catalogued diseases that European doctors would not recognize for another 600 years. He was the first to distinguish smallpox from measles. The first to write a true medical case history, patient by patient, symptom by symptom, the birth of clinical observation. He once tested hospital locations by hanging strips of meat in different parts of Baghdad and choosing the site where the meat rotted slowest. That is not folklore. That is experimental method, 400 years before Europe would name it. Astronomers at the house compiled the Zij al-Mumtahan, star tables more accurate than anything Ptolemy had produced 1,000 years before. This was not a dark age. This was an age so bright it forced the rest of the world to learn its language to read its books. Across 4 centuries, the House of Wisdom and the institutions it inspired translated and produced more than 10,000 manuscripts. And then, slowly, the books began to move. Knowledge does not stay in one place. It travels, through merchants, through pilgrims, through prisoners of war. Through travelers who carry a single book inside a saddlebag because they cannot bear to leave it behind. By the 10th century, Arabic books were flowing into Muslim Spain, into the libraries of Córdoba, and Toledo. Córdoba alone, at its height, held an estimated 400,000 volumes. To put that in perspective, the largest library in Christian Europe at the same time held about 600. Not 600,000. 600. When Christian scholars finally crossed the Pyrenees in the 12th century, hungry for what the Muslims had been reading, they found something they did not expect. They found their own ancestors. Aristotle. Euclid. Ptolemy. Galen. All speaking Arabic. In Toledo, a translation school formed, this time running the river in reverse. Arabic into Latin. Latin into the bloodstream of Europe. Thomas Aquinas, the great Catholic theologian, built his entire metaphysics on Aristotle as filtered through the Arab philosopher Ibn Rushd, whom Europeans would call Averroes. Roger Bacon, the English friar often called the father of the scientific method, learned his optics from the Arab physicist Ibn al-Haytham. Even the numerals on this page, 1, 2, 3, came west through Arabic, after Arabic borrowed them from India. We call them Arabic numerals because Europe met them in an Arab book. Copernicus, 400 years later, would use mathematical models first developed by astronomers at Moraga, direct heirs of the House of Wisdom. The Renaissance did not begin in Florence. It began on a long road, in Arabic, with a caliph who dreamed of a philosopher. And by the time Europe woke up to its full inheritance, Baghdad was already gone. It came from the steppe. In January of 1258, the Mongol commander Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis, laid siege to Baghdad. The siege lasted 13 days. When the city fell, the slaughter lasted 40. Contemporary chronicles describe the streets running with blood. And the Tigris, the great river of Baghdad, running with 2 colors. Red, from the bodies of the dead. And black, from the ink. The Mongols emptied the House of Wisdom into the river. Witnesses said you could walk across the Tigris on a bridge of books. One legend, recorded later, tells of a single manuscript by the theologian Al-Ghazali, caught by an eddy, carried gently to the far bank, and saved by a fleeing scholar who waded in to lift it from the water. One book, out of countless thousands. We will never know exactly what was lost in those 40 days. How many proofs? How many star tables? How many cures for diseases we still do not know how to treat? How many doors to ideas humanity has not yet rediscovered? But here is the strange grace of it. By 1258, the work had already escaped. The translations were in Córdoba, in Toledo, in Cairo, in Constantinople. They were in the satchels of scholars who had left Baghdad decades earlier and never come home. The Mongols could burn the building. They could not burn the idea. Because Baghdad, for 400 years, had been doing the one thing empires almost always forget to do. It had been giving its knowledge away. The House of Wisdom is a lesson the modern world keeps forgetting. Knowledge survives not by being hoarded, but by being translated. Not by being locked behind walls, but by being handed across borders, languages, and centuries, to strangers who do not yet know they will need it. When the West forgot, Baghdad remembered. And when Baghdad fell, the books were already on the road. If this changed how you see the medieval world, subscribe. We reconstruct a lost civilization every week on Untold Ages.